In the middle of the 19th century, the United States was changing rapidly. Industry was expanding, cities were growing, and people were moving from one place to another in search of a better life. However, medical science at that time was not nearly as advanced as it is today. Many illnesses that appeared in the human body could not be explained, and numerous conditions were simply described as mysterious diseases. Among the people who lived during that era were individuals whose stories deeply affected both the medical community and the imagination of society. One of those stories belonged to a man named Isaac W. Sprague. Isaac W. Sprague was born in the year 1841 in the small town of East Bridgewater, in the state of Massachusetts, United States. His childhood passed in a typical American town. His family was hardworking and modest. As a young boy, Isaac was known as healthy, energetic, and strong. People who knew him during his youth later recalled that he had an athletic build. Those around him believed that he would grow up to become a strong worker or craftsman. But when Isaac was still at the beginning of adolescence, his life began to change completely. When he was around 12 years old, a strange transformation started to appear in his body. At first, no one paid much attention to it. Isaac seemed to be losing a little weight, but it was assumed to be temporary. However, as the months passed, the situation became increasingly unusual. No matter how much food Isaac ate, his body continued to grow thinner. His family thought he simply needed to eat more. In fact, Isaac had a strong appetite. He could consume as much food as an average adult. Yet despite this, his muscles kept wasting away. Over time, the changes became far more visible. Isaac's face began to sink inward. His shoulders narrowed. His arms and legs grew thinner and thinner. Eventually, his ribs became clearly visible. The bones beneath his skin began to stand out. Doctors of the time examined Isaac, but none of them could provide a clear diagnosis. 19th century medicine had very limited knowledge about muscle diseases and disorders of the nervous system. Physicians could not find a cause that explained his condition. As the years passed, Isaac's situation became even worse. By the time he reached young adulthood, his height was approximately 1 meter and 67 centimeters, but his body weight was shockingly low. According to some sources, it had dropped to less than 20 kilograms. People who saw him were astonished. Isaac's body resembled a skeleton. Beneath his skin there was almost no visible muscle tissue. His ribs, spine, and joint bones were extremely prominent. This appearance both frightened people and fascinated them. For Isaac, however, life was becoming increasingly difficult. Physical labor was no longer possible for him. At that time, most people in America earned their living through physically demanding work. For someone who could not perform such labor, life could be extremely challenging. Because of this, Isaac had to choose a different path. In 19th century America, traveling circuses and public exhibitions were very popular. These shows featured acrobats, illusionists, animal trainers, and people with unusual physical characteristics. These performances were commonly known as sideshows. Isaac's extremely thin body soon became a striking attraction for these exhibitions. Before long, he was given a stage name, the Living Skeleton. People came to the shows specifically to see Isaac. Many found it difficult to believe that he was truly alive. Some tried to understand how a man so thin could still walk and speak. Through these performances, Isaac was able to earn a living. Eventually, he began working with one of the most famous show organizers in America, P.T. Barnum. Barnum was a well-known showman famous for presenting unusual people and extraordinary events to the public. Isaac's appearance was extremely captivating for Barnum's exhibitions. In Barnum's shows, Isaac would appear on stage and be introduced to the audience. People listened to his story, observed his body with amazement, and tried to understand how he could still be alive. But the man standing on stage was not merely a spectacle. Isaac was a person struggling with a serious illness. Modern medical experts later suggested that Isaac most likely suffered from a rare neurological disease known as progressive muscular atrophy. This disorder affects motor nerve cells and gradually causes muscles to weaken and shrink over time. In the 19th century, however, nothing was known about this disease. Isaac's life was not limited only to performances. He also attempted to build a normal life. He married and started a family. Together with his wife, he had 3 children. Interestingly, none of his children showed any signs of the illness that Isaac had. This detail was later noted as evidence suggesting that the condition might not have been genetic. Even so, Isaac's life was far from easy. As the disease progressed, his body continued to grow weaker. Even simple daily movements became increasingly difficult. Yet despite this, he continued to live and work. People who knew him described Isaac as an extremely gentle and calm man. Even though audiences stared at him in astonishment during the shows, he usually remained patient and understanding. For many years, he participated in exhibitions in numerous cities across the United States. People formed long lines to see him. Some believed he was a miracle. Others thought he was a victim of a disease that medicine could not yet explain. Isaac W. Sprague's life came to an end in the year 1887. Shortly before his death, it was said that his body weight was around 20 kilograms. He died at the age of 46. Today, the story of Isaac W. Sprague is considered one of the most unusual cases of muscle wasting in medical history. His life is not only the story of a disease, but also an example of the human will to continue living, despite immense hardship. Within the limited medical knowledge of the 19th century, he lived with an unexplained illness, yet still managed to build a family and sustain his life. The story of Isaac W. Sprague continues to fascinate people even today. Because his life reminds us how complex and mysterious the human body can truly be,